to call folks other than the police to talk through or get help for, or at least minimize the impact of a mental health crisis. So it doesn't get into the emergency stage, and hopefully lives will be helped. Information that can be shared can improve access to proper mental health services, and at the very least allow this contact to simmer down through use of time and an informed and kindly voice. So these three acts, while not law yet, form a bulkhead of what we can look forward to in the future.
Thank you, Dennis. We're all really hopeful that those move into law. And so looking forward, we have a few other ideas that we are advocating for to extend and build upon those three bills. So in the United States, law enforcement officer training on autism has recently become more common, which is likely a result of some of those really bad situations that we discussed earlier today and yesterday. Some states are even mandating autism training, but there's currently no standard that the trainings must reach across So across the departments, the trainings vary widely in duration, format, and content. So just recently, we completed a scoping review of the literature, which is forthcoming, and we identified 5 studies that have examined autism training for law enforcement officers in the extant literature. The trainings varied widely. One training was only 13 minutes and one training was 8 hours. The format across studies also varied widely. One was solely a video, others included simulation and role play, collaborative problem solving, and didactic training where the instructor was at the helm delivering instruction. And the content across these 5 trainings also varied widely, but most included general information about autism, strategies for de-escalation, and effective strategies for communication. But currently, there's no standard that autism training for law enforcement officers are held to. So we're really advocating that we need some sort of standard that these trainings should be held to, because if we have the opportunity to get in front of frontline officers and share information about autism, we really have an obligation to make sure that is actually going to make change and increasing the safety of those interactions. We also need to make sure that autistic individuals are part of the development and delivery of that training to ensure that the training is beneficial, not harmful, and that it's representative of diverse individuals on the spectrum. We cannot expect in the United States to have one autism training because we have 18,000 agencies. So that's unrealistic. But by working hand in glove with the police and command level folks, we can establish partnerships that can be used to improve the training, to set a standard for high quality evidence-based training that's based on research and bring new policy and/or law. So this would really extend and build upon the Safe Interactions Act that Dennis talked about.
So we are advocating that during the interview and interrogation process and in potential courtroom appearances that an autism expert be present if the autistic individual wants one. We always tell people when we are training that each person with autism is unique. So just as with anyone, their needs will vary. It is important to cue into these needs, especially when interviewing or interrogating a person in connection with the criminal justice system. Within the world of neurodiversity, there are differences in the way that individuals process information and express themselves. This is something that all law enforcement individuals must be aware of. It is possible that within a criminal justice related interview or interrogation, the person doing the interviewing may have little to no experience working with an autistic individual or a neurodiverse individual. This is why we advocate for the consideration of an autism expert. An autism expert should only be considered if the autistic individual desires support or if the need is determined. These experts can be called many different things. We believe in the UK, they are called appropriate adults. In the US, the term varies drastically. Dennis just talked about the Fair Interview Act, and in Florida, these individuals are called a specified professional. If necessary, the expert may be able to better explain rights, questions being asked, advocate for environmental accommodations, and so forth. So in our work with individuals with autism, one person shared with us that in the interrogation room, the overhead lighting can be quite harsh, and this down lighting can be very distracting. So he would prefer to wear a baseball cap. So these are the type of accommodations that could potentially take place.
And finally, we're calling for more explicit instruction in high schools for autistic youth on ways to safely interact with law enforcement officers, which might include explicit instruction on what to do if you are pulled over during a routine traffic stop, and also information on how to disclose your diagnosis if the autistic individual wishes to disclose. We're also calling for explicit instruction on how to safely explore sexuality online. In the United States, there have been an increasing number of autistic adults being charged for possession of child pornography. Many autism advocates in the United States firmly believe that if autistic individuals are explicitly taught how to safely explore sexuality online, that this could be avoided. And finally, we're hoping for explicit instruction that can occur on common crimes such as con schemes and how to avoid them. Dennis, can you briefly tell us what recently happened with your son, Brad?
Yeah, and it's sad, and it wasn't the first time Brad got caught up in a confidence game. So everybody gets a sense of Brad. He'll be 39 years old here in about 6 weeks. He's the love of our lives, obviously, and he's he's made us into doubting Thomases so many times since the early 1990s that I just gave up on doubting anything he could do. He's fully employed, he can drive, he has friends, he has hobbies, and one of those hobbies is playing the guitar, and he's gotten fairly good at it. And we love listening to him play. But he also trades in amplifiers and guitars online. So this was a cyber crime that in the past would be called a confidence game and would be done in person. And it's still done in person. But now that we have the cyber effects out here, Brad was selling an amplifier. A gentleman who said he was from Texas contacted him and said, "Oh, I really want it, but we're moving, and would you be able to ship it to a new address? And for your kindness and your assistance here, we'll give you an extra $200 for the amplifier, and then we'll add in another $700 to pay for the shipping from Florida over here to Texas." And Brad, he likes people, but friendly people give him a curveball here. It's different. It's difficult for him to determine somebody who's friendly who isn't a friend and somebody who is friendly who is. So in this case, he agreed to take their check, and when he got it, he put it into his bank account. And then the guy in Texas asked him to, well, just write the difference. You're gonna keep what's left over. And Brad agreed to do that. Sent a check to Texas to the address, and then by the time he learned that the check that he received from them was not accepted by his bank, he was out for about $550. But it wasn't the first time for Brad in his lifetime. Friends online or live have befriended him, and ultimately there was the ask for money, and he finally is figuring out some of these, but it's a difficult place to be, and training for recognizing street crime or cons online is going to be an essential part of the future. We need to explain and mandate, if necessary, this instruction in formative years, so folks on the spectrum or with ND aren't falling victim to these kinds of schemes.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for sharing that about Brad. And we're just really advocating that this information be presented in evidence-based ways that work for individuals on the spectrum and neurodiverse youth. So it looks like we are just about out of time. So I'm going to pull up our email slide, and I believe Christine's been monitoring in the chat. Do we have time to answer that one question?
There's a question.
Yes, you do.
Okay,
Okay, thank
perfect.
you.
Okay, so we have a question, Dennis. I think I'm going to throw this one to you. It says, I'm sorry if I missed this, but does the Safe Interaction Act or similar laws also include any policy that social workers or social service providers should be sent instead of police for calls that are likely to involve neurodiverse folks?
Yeah, that really goes to the second law that the same Senator Bob Casey is, there's a trio of laws that they're trying to get passed. So if all three were passed, it would directly affect that opportunity. Currently, you would need disclosure in order to get that, get a crisis intervention trained police officer or a mental health partner to a scene. You would need either prior to the contact someone who voluntarily provided that information or learn it on scene. And it's a great concept that is addressed in the HELP Act. But currently it's going to be hit or miss, and depending on the community you live in, of the 18,000 that are represented by police departments, there's different levels of funding and other natural barriers to that. But in other places, there's great opportunities and current programs that are pilots, if you will, that show success. So I hope that helped.
Thank you
And
so
I
much.
love the comment. It is not possible to clone Dennis. So it is very difficult to find these individuals, these experts. So that's another area for growth. So thank you so much to everyone. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much for all of
everybody.
you to be here and sharing your insights, and also the real life examples, which I think are important for us to see. It's uncomfortable, but it's something that we have to be aware of. I've always sort of said, look, I want to be allowed to be people naive, because I am, and I want to be that way. And I would like to have people around me who help me if it goes wrong. We don't all have that, but I just hate the fact that if I have one bad apples, I don't want to eat apples again. I want to believe that people are good as a starting point. And possibly I want to believe that too much, but I see so many other neurodivergent people like me having the same starting point. Unfortunately, we do have a world full of kind of people that like using vulnerable people for their own gains. And for that, it's difficult to see why we can provide enough protection. But again, almost like neighborhood watch, when we are all coming together and looking out for each other, it does help a lot. So thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank